The one, the only Briggs, Bubba Hopson, Mississippi Senator from District, what is it, 23, Yazoo, Warren
23.
Counties, Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Nobody's taken that 23 and devalued it during inflation, so it's still 23. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. And is it too late to say Happy New Year? First time you and I have spoken this year. But
no, it's not.
It
It is not, and I'm glad to see you back and ready to rock and roll, and also chair of appropriations, because we feel confident in all of the conversations we've had over the years. We feel like you know what you're doing and leading us to the proper roads, to so to speak. Let's talk about this economic development project first of all. Some people asking, why is it necessary to have a special session within a session? And my thoughts were just, you need this done with some finality, and it has to be done without waiting for the fiscal year to end. But your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's right. And, certainly the governor is going to put together what we refer to as a call. And in that call, he's going to have particulars of what can be done. I think the only reason that you would do it in a special session technically, as opposed to a general session, is the call limits what can be discussed or added. And certainly I don't expect there to be any amendments or changes or anything of that sort in this particular project, but it keeps it in line, keeps things tight, so you don't have to worry about somebody trying to throw in something that's totally unrelated to this project to try to score some points or have us debate an issue that's not pertinent at all to what we're doing today and tomorrow.
Briggs, I don't think there's any additional cost, is there, with the legislative fee? In other words, the legislators don't get extra money for this, do they?
I think there is actually there is an extra fee for that. And
is it?
Years ago, I think so. And I think years ago, I'm not 100% sure of that, but it seems like there was an opportunity to defer that or not accept it. But then that may have been an issue too. But Paul, I haven't looked back or thought about that again, and so I can check and find out though.
All right. Let me ask you this. How long do you think this, just give me an idea, and you may or may not know this, but how long do you think this has been in the works? Because people need to know these things don't just pop up overnight. There's so many different phone calls and meetings for something this big to happen. So it's interesting, because I mentioned this a little bit earlier, Mr. Chairman, that all through the campaign, these are the things that the Republicans know, and the Democrats are knocking them about not doing this or that, and there's some things you just can't reveal.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Paul, that you have a build-up to any kind of big project like this over months, even years. And we've been hearing how good the Marshall County site was for a long time. I mean, it's been a hot site, and a lot of folks have looked at it. And I'm real proud of the governor, the MDA staff, and those that have been involved in it, because I know this is, and look, the folks up in Marshall County too, their economic development folks and team, because I know that they've worked to get this site ready for this kind of project. And also, I know others have come kicking on the tires, and I'm happy that there are some projects that I'm aware of that have looked at this, but the financial package was just not right. I mean, you don't want to give away the farm just to get somebody to be there. And I'm proud that they've really vetted this one, and it appears to be a strong project that'll be good for Mississippi for a long time.
You think this is kind of an indication that our workforce development project that we constantly are working on, and we need to keep doing that, is on track to be where it needs to be, and we're doing the things that we need to do?
I think you just said it perfectly, and that is that we are on track. We're moving in the right direction. I don't think we're where we need to be. We created Accelerate a couple of years ago to start. That's one of. Let me back up. I was at a conference with some economic development folks nationally a few years back, and they talked about all the great attributes Mississippi had to be a top-notch economic development site. And, a good property cost, hard workers, good labor force, working on education was improving, all these things that were really good, good economic environment, tax environment, everything. But one thing they stressed to me was we had a little bit of a disjointed workforce development process. And what I mean by that is we had mainly our community college system, which does a fine job with our economic development and workforce needs. it depended on where you were. Some community colleges did a better job than others, and I'm not going to point out some that were better than others because I don't know, but they said sometimes it inhibited certain areas of the state because they were not as strong in workforce development. But Accelerate has tried to bring all that together, and the community colleges will still be heavily involved. And I think you'll see in this case that the community college will be heavily involved in workforce training. That's in the Northwest Community College District. But so we're on the path, Paul. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're doing some really good things in workforce development. And I think you're going to see an emphasis over the next 4 years to continue that.
It's one of the other things, too, is when people across the country hear this, that we have a larger percentage of our population workforce that could work and is not working than any other state, that's got to be daunting. That's got to make the sales guys in Mississippi make that sale harder when they ask you, okay, how come you guys have a larger percentage of people that are employable that are not even looking for work than any other state per capita? And you got to cross that Rubicon somewhere down there and answer that. And it can't be. It's not one of those things that you want to put on a billboard.
Yeah, interestingly, we've talked about this, that our unemployment rates are at historic lows, which is great, but those are folks that are seeking employment. We've had a problem in Mississippi, I think, for a long time. We have some that just have not sought employment, and that is something. You've heard the lieutenant governor speak about this in his campaign and in his first speeches as he started his new term, and that is we're going to really emphasize that issue, Paul, that very issue of getting those that are workforce eligible into the workforce, and try to make sure we've done everything we can at the state level to get them trained. Some of that's going to start with our high schools and our community colleges, again, to make sure we're getting folks on a path that they understand the value of employment in our state.
Yeah. The other thing, too, and I think every employer, no matter how small or large, regardless of some of the big guys coming in, and this problem is not indigenous to Mississippi, it's all across the nation, is work ethic. Even though you have the force there, you try to train them, what's the ethics? How much can they become a part of the team and want to work and show up on time and be civil, et cetera, et cetera? And that's something, I don't know if schools can teach that. I mean, it has to start at home.
Yeah, don't disagree with that, Paul. The home is where everything's going to start. There are things you can do to help emphasize or accelerate that, but it's got to start at home.
Briggs Hopson, who is chair of appropriations, what do our numbers look like as far as marching down this road to maybe at least talk about another decrease in personal income tax? And as you saw earlier, and I posted this, and there's been a lot of feedback on that, we have the third highest grocery tax in the United States of America. What are we going to do this session about that?
Well, talk about, you asked first, where are we in the process? We're about $100 million ahead of our budget right now, $100 million to the good. There's some good and bad in that. I mean, we're a little bit below. We're about 20 million below where we were last year at this point, but we're still ahead of our projections. One thing that I'm looking at carefully is when you consider the 100 million, about 45% of that is in interest on our investments. And, we have a lot of money come in through ARPA and some other things, and all that money hasn't gone out. So some of that's sitting in the bank right now, so we're drawing interest. So that number's a little bit inflated. I mean, again, we're still in the positive. We're still in the black. That's great news. I want to kind of see, like I probably told you this last year, I kind of want to see how things shake out a little bit with the funds that we've had come in for projects like ARPA, and we're seeing a slowdown. Everybody is. I don't want to do and see us be where a lot of states are. Now, most of these states are what I'm going to refer to as blue states, but California's, New York's, Massachusetts right now are in major financial trouble because they've overspent in some areas. I've even seen Arizona's having a problem. They were 1.8 billion ahead, and then they did maybe got too aggressive with tax cuts and did some other things too, and they ended up 450 or 400 million below this year, and it projected to be 450 million below next year in their budget. So it's I'm looking long, looking a little short term, but long term too, where this thing goes.
I want to ask you more about this when we come back.
Sure.
It is a lot like weaning yourself off of narcotics or even smoking. You have to do a little at a time, and we're, I think, doing that. We saw that we had a drop in the personal income tax, but it was made up in other areas. And the drop in the personal income tax is the thing that was supposed to happen. And how do we wean ourselves off of that for the greater good of the body itself? And the body is the people of the state of Mississippi. More with Briggs Hopson coming up in River, since we have Briggs Hopson on. So there
That's
you
right.
are. I do want to ask you this. One of the ways we talk about workforce development, and that's tied to education, as you have alluded to. And one of the topics this year in the House and the Senate is going to be school choice, parents' school choice. We understand that it's a hot button issue. There are probably going to be numerous bills on this one. People need to figure out a way to put it all together to placate a large section of the state of Mississippi. But just to ask you, because I know you've been involved in this also, if it's not school choice and if that's completely taken off the table, and we understand that we've got to do something different, because if we continue to do what we're doing, generations from now, we're going to have the same results. So if it's not school choice, what's the other ideas out there?
Well, let me first of all say I'm really proud of the educational attainment increases we've had in Mississippi over the last few years. I mean, I'm sure it's been talked about here and many other places, the increases in performance for our students. And a lot of that's been because we have emphasized getting reading and math coaches into our schools. We've emphasized hard looks at our failing schools, the difficult schools. So, and that's one of the things I really want to focus on this session too, is kind of looking at these chronically underperforming schools, Paul. I'm concerned that we're seeing the same schools that are having performance issues. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this very thing, that's just got to be an emphasis of ours. If we're gonna bring everybody up, and we've brought a lot up, and I say it's a collective we. I'm talking about our educators and parents, teachers, principals, et cetera. But we've got to also look at some places that just historically have underperformed. And what are we going to do about those areas? Because in a lot of those places, unfortunately, there are no options other than that school. That's about all they have there. And so
Right.
To give those students a chance. And one thing I'm going to say, and I have said it over and over again, is I guess that's because I'm a little proud of it, but it's a bill that I passed about 10 years ago, and it's the Distance Learning Act. And I don't think our schools are utilizing a tool that is in the toolbox right now, and that's for them to go and get the best teacher they can get. If they don't have a teacher that can teach advanced calculus in their school district, they are available around this state. And I wish every superintendent and principal would listen to this. Don't just say we can't get a teacher to teach these kids. There are options to get them to do this. And I want to get with the new state superintendent. I talked to the interim about this a couple of months ago. I want to get with the new state superintendent and say, look, this needs to be emphasized so every district in the state knows they've got an option to get the best teacher possible for those kids. I'm tired, really kind of tired of the excuse that, hey, we don't have access to certain teachers. You do have access if you work this program right. So that's an important thing for me too.
That is, I'm curious about this. Is this interactive? In other words, the teacher, regardless of who or he or she is and where they are, let's say they could be in Nebraska somewhere, but they would be specifically teaching that class, or is it recorded?
No, they would be teaching that. What they would do is, and there have been some instances of this happening. I will say in the past, we have not had the broadband capabilities that we now have, and some of that's due to the stuff that's happened with ARPA and CARES Act, et cetera. But they would have a teacher in Mississippi that they could contract with. I know Boonville did this, and a couple other school districts where their teachers would be made available to teach the students in other districts. And I want our state department to work on this so that there are teachers around the state that can broadcast their classes to other students around the state. All they would need in that class is a classroom monitor. So you don't have to hire the teacher. You just have a classroom monitor to make sure the students are paying attention and they've got their computers out to look at this. And I think that can go a long way to helping a lot of the kids that don't have access to good teachers.
Well, Well, you bring a world-class teacher into the classroom in an area up in the Mississippi Delta or some other places that would otherwise not be able to have that. So it's a very, very good idea, and we need to do this. And I would hope most of the areas, certainly the rural areas, do have or will have the capability as far as broadband is concerned. We only got a couple of more seconds here. Wish we had more time, but just anything else you want to put in here just to pave the way for us as we get more and more days behind us and get more serious about some of the minutia of the 2024 session now that some of the stuff is out of the way.
I always say this in the new term: you have no idea what's going to come out after the first year. You kind of have an idea about what the big issues are going to be. I mean, we know a few that are out there that have been talked about. The usuals, education, PERS is going to be an issue that'll be discussed to some degree this year, making sure we've got a solid retirement system for our employees. Yeah. That's going to be an issue. I mean, healthcare is going to be there too. But I think now everybody's kind of, pardon the expression, feeling everybody out. We're just finding out who's got the committee chairs on both sides, and the dust will settle on that pretty soon. Let's get through this economic development project. Ask me again about a month, I'll have a better idea about what the issues are that are bubbling up to the top.
Then that's a deal. We'll get you back in about a month. Okay. We appreciate it, sir, very much. Briggs, Hopson, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Good to
Representative Rob Robertson coming in 8:05. Back.